Hi guys, welcome back to the greenhouse. My name is Kate with Wallace's Garden Center, and today we are going to talk about repotting your houseplants. As the days get longer, we hit late winter, early spring, and this becomes the time that it is time to start thinking about repotting. You don't have to repot your houseplants all the time, but there are a couple different reasons to do it. One is just simply that you don't like the pot that it's in. Maybe you've just come to the garden center, bought a new plant, and it's in this grower pot and you want to put it in something pretty. Another reason would be that the plant has kind of outgrown the pot that it's in. You've had it for maybe a year, maybe 9 months, maybe a little longer than a year, and you're starting to see signs that the plant wants to go into a bigger pot. One sign is that you might see the roots starting to come up, either up and out the top of the pot or coming out the drainage holes in the bottom of your pot. You may see that start to happen, and they're just so crowded in there that they're starting to look for oxygen in other places. Some other more subtle signs of needing to be repotted is that when you're having to water more often, all of a sudden there's more roots inside that pot than there is soil. And the soil is what holds the moisture in there. So if the water is all running out and you're having to water more often than you remember doing before, it may be that the plant just needs to have a little bit more space for its roots. The third sign would be that the growth is slowing. This is a plant, maybe you've had it for a while and you kind of know the growth rate that it's going, and all of a sudden it starts to slow down. And that can be a sign of it needing to be repotted as well. So the number one question we get is, how do I know what size pot to go to, right? So we have our pots. These ones here are in 6-inch grower pots right now. When you're sizing up a houseplant, you never want to go more than 1 to 2 inches larger than the pot size that you're in. So on a 6-inch pot like this, the biggest I'm going to go is up to an 8-inch pot. If you get too much bigger, all of a sudden you've got all this extra soil volume that holds water, that there's not roots taking up space and metabolizing that water. So we want to just size up just a little bit into the next size pot. For example, this is a little 4-inch pot. He needs to be repotted, but we would want to pot this into a 5 or 6-inch size pot and not something as large as this 8-inch. That is just too much soil volume for the size of that plant. So this is a 5-inch pot. So when I'm looking at this little guy that's sitting in his 4-inch home, a new perfect home for this guy is going to be something in a 5-inch. He's going to fit in there nicely. We're going to be able to get some more soil and give his roots a little bit more room to grow. When I talk about the size of the pot, when I say 5-inch, 4-inch, 6-inch, what I mean is the diameter across the top of the pot. So when you are also deciding, you come into the garden center to look for a new pot for your plant, and you see so many options. You'll see terracotta clay, which is kind of old-fashioned, but what's old is new again, very trendy right now. You'll see a lot of glazed ceramic, where you have that kind of nice shiny glazed coating. You tend to see this the most, lots and lots of variety in the glazed ceramic pottery. And then you'll see plastic. You'll have some nice plastic pots that you can use. None of them are wrong. You can actually do any of them, especially if you're trying to find something pretty to fit your decor. You can go with any of those styles. The things to look for are a drainage hole. So if we look in here, there's a hole in the bottom and then a saucer attached so the water can drain out. In the clay, we also have a drainage hole. We need a place for that water that the plant is not using to get out. If the water stays in the pot too long, it can actually suffocate the roots and cause root rot and cause eventual plant decline, plant death. So we want to make sure we have drainage in our container. Other things to remember with the terracotta clay is that this is a very porous material. So plants planted in terracotta clay are going to dry out a little bit faster. They're going to have air moving through not only the drainage hole, but also through the entire side of the pot as well. So you may have to adjust your watering, especially if you're switching from plastic into terracotta or the other way around. I love to use terracotta for my succulents and plants that don't really like a lot of water, like ZZ plant, snake plant. They do great in terracotta because they do dry out a little faster. The ceramic or glazed pots I love because they have so much variety. You can do any color, lots of textures. You can always find something in the right size to fit the decor of the room you're using and the aesthetic of the plant itself. So this is not porous, so it is not going to dry out quite as quickly. So you just need to watch your watering a little bit more than you would with the clay. So that is glazed terracotta. And then the plastic. Again, we're still looking for drainage. This is one that has 3 drainage holes and it has an attached saucer, so we can sit it inside on a wood bookcase. It's not going to cause any damage. And with plastic, it's nice because it's lightweight, but also again, it's non-porous, so it's going to hold water a little bit more than the clay. One thing I forgot to mention on the terracotta clay is that the saucer itself is actually glazed on the inside on our saucers, so when the water drains out, it will sit in the saucer and not leak through onto the surface that it's sitting on. So you can come in, you have kind of your choice of containers. Then once you find one that's the right size, again, 1 to 2 inches bigger than the container that it's in, and then the right materials. Today I'm going to repot this ZZ plant into this yellow container right here. So again, a 6-inch pot going into an 8-inch. So now that I have my plant and my pot chosen, I need some soil. So I like to use the Wallace's container mix. This is a mix that we formulated. It's what we use in our greenhouse for all the things that we plant. So I love the container mix. It's really nice, light and fluffy, easy to use. So I always start by putting a little bit of soil in the bottom, right there, and just kind of create a little bed for my plant to sit on. And then once I have a little bit of soil in the bottom, then I go ahead and I take off my plastic pot. So sometimes they come off real easily, and sometimes you have to kind of gently massage the sides of the pot so that you can remove it. We're trying to keep the root ball intact when we remove it. So here we go, we've got our pot off and we can see our roots. In a plant that is really, really root bound and you see a huge mass of roots and they're starting to circle and kind of choke each other out, you'll want to go ahead and kind of what we call tease those roots out a little bit. This one's not too bad, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyways just to show you. But we're just kind of loosening those roots. It may break them a little bit, but that's just going to encourage more root growth. So we're just kind of teasing that out all the way around. And then as far as depth goes, the key is to plant your house plant and repot it at the same depth that it was sitting in this container. So a lot of times when it's still in the container, I will sit it in there and see if I have enough soil in the bottom to keep that where I want it. So this is probably just about right. So I'm going to take my container back off again, and I'm going to sit that root ball right there, and then I'm going to take a look and see if it's at the same level. We don't want to plant it deeper because then we can have problems with rotting at the crown of the plant. And then we also want to put it in the center and make sure we have it nice and centered. And then the other thing I like to do is make sure that I don't fill the soil all the way to the very rim of the pot. I want to leave about this much space so that when I water it, the water stays on the soil and soaks in and doesn't run over the sides and make a mess in my house. So I'm actually going to lift this up and add just a hair more soil here. And then I'm going to set this down. Now I'm using, this is a ZZ plant, and I'm actually using just our regular container mix. There are other types of soils that are more specialized depending on the type of plant you're doing. So there is a cactus and succulent mix. There's an orchid mix if you're doing any specialty orchids. And then there's a nice African violet mix if you are doing African violets. So most of our container mix is going to work for almost all of your house plants, but there are specialty soils that you can definitely use for certain types of plants. Back to our repotting. So we have our plant, he's centered, he's at the right level. So now all I have to do for the rest of it is just fill in around the sides of our plant. And you can use a trowel. Using your hand like I'm doing is kind of fun. I love to get dirty. I love to play in the dirt. But it is also a little bit messy. You'll have to clean up a little bit around afterwards. So as I'm filling this in, another great thing to do is kind of use your pot as a soil scoop and kind of fill in around there. And then as I go around, I kind of press the soil down. We're trying to press out any air pockets, not pack it tight, but just kind of firm that soil in all the way around our plant. They do make these awesome little kind of houseplant sized garden tools now. This is a little trowel. These tend to work really great when you're dealing with smaller containers. When you're repotting into a 4-inch or a 5-inch, this can kind of get down in there where your fingers don't always fit. It's also nice to use tools like this if you're dealing with something a little pokey like a cactus. So, but we've got this guy pretty much all the way filled in. I'm gonna do a little bit more soil over here on this side. We're gonna firm it in, and our plant is perfect in his new little home. And so the next thing to do is to water thoroughly. So I've got my little watering can. This is a nice little indoor can. It's got this little kind of shower spout on the end. And I'm gonna go through and water the soil. And typically when you repot a houseplant, you want to soak the soil kind of all the way through. So let me go around here, oops. And you'll see it start to drain out into the saucer. I love to use attached saucer pots so that I don't have to pick up my plant and move it over to my sink. So we have that guy all watered in. If you do have excess water in the saucer, it's good to just go over to the sink, dump it out a little bit, and make sure you don't have the plant sitting in that excess water. If you don't want to dump it, you can also just take a paper towel, go in there and soak up that extra water. There are a few final touches that I like to do when I repot my houseplants. So I like to use a top dressing. You don't have to, but you certainly can. There's lots of different things you can use. This is a forest moss that I like to use. Some people will use decorative rock or Spanish moss, things like that. So I just take kind of a nice layer of green moss, and sometimes it's easier to work with when it's wet, but I just go through and I kind of tuck that in. And when I water at home, sometimes I kind of pick up the moss and water underneath, and then sometimes if I haven't watered for a while, I'll just water right over the top of the moss. It just takes a little bit longer for it to sink in. So I just kind of tuck that in, covering up all the soil. I just like the way this looks at my house, so this is why I do it. Some people prefer the soil, and it's perfectly okay to leave it that way. So I've done that, and then my very last task that I do before I go ahead and put this out on display in my home is to clean it up a little bit. A lot of times when you buy a new plant at the garden center, in the greenhouse, you'll have some water spotting on the leaves from overhead watering or from shipping. And so I love these houseplant wipes. They are called plant cleaning wipes, and they work a lot like, like a Clorox wipe, but they're plant safe. And I just go ahead and kind of wipe off those water spots and get my plant, kind of gives it a shine, and gets rid of those water spots and just makes it kind of look like new. One thing I also like the houseplant wipes for, especially if it's a plant I've had in my house for a while, is that it's great for dusting. You can also use a leaf shine product if you want to make them really glossy and shiny. There's one called Protect from We the Wild that I really like to use because it's also neem oil spray, so it helps with insect control. Once I've got all my plant wiped off, it is perfectly repotted, top dressed, cleaned, and ready to go out for display in my house. Thanks for joining me today in the greenhouse. Thanks for watching. My name is Kate. I'm here with Wallace's in Bettendorf. Come visit me in the greenhouse and get all your questions on home and garden answered anytime.